Hi, Mr. Acio.
Hello. Good morning, Leo. Good morning, Mike.
Hey.
Hello.
Hello. Yeah, I will be in a minute. Troy. All right. You just did that. Turn. I did. That's it. Hey, how are you? Turn your video. All right. Hey, Derek.
Morning, Derek.
Hey, Mayor Walker.
We got 5 voting on it right now.
Yeah.
Hello.
I'm Thank.
Stickers.
And you got the stickers.
How you doing, sir?
How are you? Okay,
All right,
let's
all
start
right.
trying to tally up, and if everybody, after you acknowledge, if you'll just mute everything, until we're ready. So far I've got Anderson, Leaks, Mood, Terracio, Huggins. I've got non-voting Mr. Green, Mr. Walker, Mr. Unthank. Staff, I've got Franny, Rick, and Pam Baker.
I'm here.
And Joyce is on.
Burgess.
And Ms. Burgess is on, okay? Thank you. Y'all go ahead and mute until we're ready.
Skip Jenkins here.
Hey, Skip.
How you doing?
Good. You?
I'm doing well, thanks.
Okay. Anybody else?
Ron, this is Lil. I'm having technical problems here, so I'm trying to get my agenda to come up online. Can you give me a minute?
Yes, ma'am.
Miss Mood, it takes a few minutes.
Oh, gosh, sorry.
Well, I'm going back to the iPad. I couldn't make the other stuff work, so but now I'm having trouble. I mean, I've read the whole thing on the iPad, and now it's not coming up. So here's the thing. Start over.
It's saying that I have to admit people for the staff. I wasn't. Oh, I'm sorry. What do you mean? Oh.
And it's Rebecca?
Yes.
Is that right? Rebecca? Catherine, I'm sorry. Okay.
Now that should do it.
Lexington County, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I can close that out.
Okay, has anybody else joined the call? Okay, we'll give it one more minute and then we'll get going. Are you trying to track down the other board members? The voting board members?
How many do we have right now?
We've got 7. We're missing Howard, Gleason,
Hold on one second.
Howard, Gleason, Morris, and, Smith.
Huggins.
Okay, Derek, we got you. Got Mr. Tyson. Okay. Welcome, everybody. If everybody will mute until, good morning. Everybody will mute until, we get started, and try to keep everything muted. And especially your computer mic, and your cell phone mic. Make sure you only have one hot mic, and then mute while you're not talking. I will do my best to make sure everybody gets a chance to stay their seat. Hey, Mr. Howard. Dr. Morris. Good afternoon, Dr. Morris.
Good afternoon.
Andy. That's it. Andy's on. Andy, are you on?
I am.
Okay. Okay, it's new, it's 12:01. I'm gonna go through, and tell you who I think I've got on, and then if, you're missing and I didn't identify you, speak up when I get through. Voting board members, I have Anderson, Leak, Mood, Taratio, Huggins, Dickerson, Burgess, Howard, Morris, and Smith. Okay, non-voting members, I have Green, Walker, Unthank, Jenkins, and Kuhn. Staff, I have Heiser, Morgan, Baker, Tyson, and then I have Catherine from Lexington County Development here in the room. Additionally, I've got Paige and John. Is there anybody else on the call?
Ron, this is Franny. Rick Morgan is with us.
I'm sorry, I thought I said his name. Okay, thank you. Okay, I know we've had AV problems in the past. We've got Jeremy, the AV guy here. So if something goes wrong, he can jump in and help us get straight. I'm going to go ahead and call the July 29th, 2020 board meeting to order. I'm going to, for the record, voting members, I have Anderson, Leak, Mood, Taratio, Huggins, Dickerson, Burgess, Howard, Morris, and Smith. To my knowledge, you do not have Ms. Gleason on the phone. Okay, so we have 10 members. I determined we do have a quorum. For the record, non-voting members, we have Green, Walker, Unthank, Jenkins, Kuhn, and Ms. Summers just joined us in person. And then staff, I have Heiser, Morgan, Baker, Tyson, and Catherine, what's your last name? Kaysen. Catherine Kaysen from Lexington County. I have John Ando and Paige Jernigan. And Jeremy, who's the AV guy. I'm sorry, who is that? I'm sorry, who joined? Okay. Okay. So first item, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Miss Mood.
I make a motion to adopt the agenda with if we remove two items. One is 7F, the general counsel, and then I think we may need to defer 7A because of the length of time that we have to post any bylaws changes.
7A or 7G? 7G, the amendment portion of 7G.
7A was posted accordingly.
Oh, 7A was posted accordingly. I believe it's the bylaw change in 7G you were referring to.
Well, 7G on the packet that I have is election. The amendment of the bylaws. Right. That's it.
Okay. So I'll second the motion to approve the agenda with the omission of 7F and the bylaw amendment portion of 7G.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
Yes.
May I ask who's speaking?
that's Burgess.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to amend that motion to move the election of officers up to 6A on their agenda.
Up to 6A?
That's correct, after the consent calendar.
Oh, okay, to do it prior to the balance of 7?
That's correct.
Okay, so I have a motion from Ms. Mood, and it's been seconded on the floor, so what you would need to do is, Franny, correct me if I'm wrong, the proper way for him to do that would be to offer an amendment to the original motion?
That's correct.
Ms.
Yes,
Franny?
that's correct. Yes,
Okay,
that's
so
correct.
you would need to move to amend the original motion, and then what would need to happen?
A second would need to second that amended motion, and then you could call for discussion and call for a vote.
And the vote would be on the amended motion or the,
Amended motion.
okay. So that would be subject to Ms. Mood agreeing to the amendment?
Correct.
Okay, okay.
No, I'm sorry, it's a separate, separate.
Say it again. Walk me through that again, Rick.
Yeah, go ahead. So this is Franny. The, Mr. Fergus's motion is an amended motion. It needs to have a second. If it has a second, it would be discussed and voted on first.
Okay, but that would just be the amendment portion of it?
Correct.
I got you. Okay, so, Mr. Burgess, I need you to make an amendment motion to move the Board 7G to the beginning of the item 7.
Yeah, my motion is to move the election of officers to the end of the consent calendar.
Okay,
And I second that.
okay, I have a motion to amend the original motion by moving the election, which is item 7G, immediately after the consent agenda, or effectively the 7A. Okay, so I have a motion and a second, an amendment motion and a second. That's all the motion does is amend the first motion. Can I have discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. When we elect the officers, do they take office at the end of this meeting, wherever they are on the agenda, wherever the election is on the agenda?
Defer to Ms. Heiser on that.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Clayton is having problems getting on, and she needs
Okay.
Paige to call her.
Okay.
Okay, we're doing it. Franny, can you clarify?
I apologize, but we're having some sound issues. Could y'all repeat the question?
Ms. Moo's question was Ms. Little, go ahead, repeat your question.
Okay, my question is, when we have election of officers, do they take office at the end of this meeting, regardless of where we do the election on the agenda?
Mr. Chair,
Yeah, I don't think the bylaws specifically provide for that, so it could be either way. I think,
Well,
Hold on, Ms. Morris, I'll get you in. Dr. Morris, hold on a second. Franny,
So,
go ahead.
my concern is that I don't want us to try to change officers in the middle of a meeting. That was my concern.
I agree, and that is the traditional way that would take over at the end of the meeting.
Thank you.
Okay.
yes, Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
to my knowledge, that's not the way we operate in the past. Last election, we took over, the officers took over immediately, but then those who were responsible for items on the agenda carried those out.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else in discussion?
So how will we do that today?
Well, this is all subject to the vote being, us amending the agenda in that way, but yeah. I think Colonel Leaks is trying to ask a question.
Yeah, I was thinking in a situation like this that we should probably go ahead and let the current chairperson finish this meeting and let the newly elected officers take over at the end.
You did, and that's muted, so.
I would hope so. I would think so.
Good afternoon, Ms. Clayton. For the record, Ms. Clayton has joined the call. Did you get that?
Did you?
Hello, this Carolyn
Hello, Ms.
Gleason.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello, Ms.
Thank God, y'all
Yes,
finally got me through.
ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, so, I heard you, any other discussion on the amended motion?
I didn't hear it, I just got through.
Okay, I'll recap for you in just one second, Ms. Gleason. Is there
Thank
any
you.
other discuss- Okay, so the amended motion, Ms. Gleason, would be to move the officer election. We're in the middle of adopting the agenda. There's been a motion to adopt by removing 7F and the bylaw amendment portion of 7G. And then there's been an amendment, Ms. Burgess has made a motion to amend the original motion by moving the officer elections up to immediately after item 6. So before we
Yep.
get into the meat and potatoes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Yes, ma'am.
Mhm.
Okay, so if there's no further discussion, I'm go ahead and call the question.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't get any clarification on how we're going to manage the meeting, which officers will manage, how we will do the transition of officers for this meeting. I know legal counsel had one opinion and Dr. Morris had another, so I'm not clear on what our process will be.
So I will jump in here and I will say that it is the will of the body. So you would, maybe before you actually have the election of officers, you should get have a vote as to whether the officers become effective during the meeting or at the end of the meeting.
So am I to understand that the vote on this amendment doesn't affect that one way or another?
Correct.
You are correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Dr. Morris.
I'll yield.
Okay. Okay, so if there's no more discussion, so right now, the motion on the floor is to amend the original motion to adopt the agenda, subject to deleting item 7F and the amendment bylaw portion of 7G. So the amendment that you're voting on right now would move, all you're voting on right now is whether to move the officer election up immediately after item 6 and preceding the other items in item 7. Is everyone clear? Okay. When I call your name, indicate by saying yes or no on how you vote on the amendment motion. Anderson, no. Leaks,
Yes.
Mood,
No.
Gracia,
No.
Huggins,
Yes.
Dickerson,
No.
Burgess,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Smith.
No.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, that's 6-5 affirmative?
I was never asked.
Oh, I'm sorry,
Gleason.
Ms. Gleason, I apologize.
Thank
Ms.
you.
Gleason, how would you vote?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So correct me if I'm wrong, but that is a 6-5? Oh, okay, so the amendment motion carries. Okay, now we move to the discussion on adoption of the agenda, deleting item 7F and the amendment bylaw portion of 7G. Any discussion on that? Okay, barring none, indicate your vote by saying yea or nay when I call your name. Anderson, yes? I'm sorry, I'll stop. Yes, sir.
What are we
Somebody's
voting
breaking
on
up.
now?
I'm sorry, what?
Could you repeat what we're voting on?
Yes, sir. We are voting on Ms. Mood's original motion, which is to adopt the agenda, but by deleting item 7F and the amendment bylaw portion of 7G.
Okay.
Everybody got it? Okay. When I call your name, say yea or nay based on how you want to vote. Anderson, yes. Lee?
Yes.
Mood?
Yes.
Tarazio?
Yes.
Huggins?
Yes.
Dickerson?
Yes.
Burgess,
Yes.
Howard,
Yes.
Morris,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Gleason.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Okay, first thing up is Midland Transit Riders Association update. Is Mr. Gossett here? He is not. Okay, moving on to the call to the public. Is there anyone from the public on the line? No, there is not. Okay. Item 5, presentations, employee of the month for TransDev and Transport Care. Those, John, do you want to announce those, please?
Yes. Page 6 of your packet, members of the board and Mr. Chairman, gives you the report from TransDev and Transport Care for the employees of the month for May and June. For TransDev, it's Tyrone Gabriel, who is a transit operations supervisor. For Transport Care Services, it's William Tyler, who is a bus operator. In the case of June of 2020, it is Jerry Bowers, who is, at the time, the facility technician. And for Transport Care Services, it's Rachel Higginson, who is a paratransit operator. Transit did provide them with the appropriate plaques, and RATPDev will be presenting their Employee of the Month starting next month.
Thank you. Okay, consent calendar. I have 7 items on the consent calendar. Can I get a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
I have a motion from Dr. Morris. Can I get a second?
Second.
I have a second from Mr. Smith. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, barring none, indicate your vote by saying your name when I call your name. Anderson, yes. Leaks?
Yes.
Mood?
Yes.
Taratio?
Yes.
Huggins?
Yes.
Dickerson?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Gleason?
Yes.
Okay, next up is going to be item 7G, which is the election of officers. I would suggest before we jump into doing that we settle the question about how we're going, at the finalization of the election of officers, do the new officers take over mid-meeting or do they take over next meeting?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
could we elect the officers and let the officers decide since we're changing procedures?
Well, it's the will of the body how we proceed. That's certainly one way we could do it.
Yes,
Mr. Chairman.
I'd like to nominate Colonel
wait.
Lee.
Hold on, Ms. Curtis. Hold on. Go ahead, Ms. Mead. What were you asking?
I'm still following through on what you said, and so I think what we need is a motion on what we want to do here. So I would make a motion that after the election of new officers, that the new officers assume their responsibilities at the close of this meeting.
Okay, I'll second that motion. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, barring none, indicate your position by saying your name when I call your name. Anderson, yes. Lee?
Yes.
Mood?
Yes.
Taratio? Taratio? Okay, Huggins?
Yes.
Sorry, yeah.
Taratio is a yes. Huggins, yes. Dickerson?
Yes.
Burgess?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Smith?
Yes.
Gleason?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. So the slate of officers is elected. Will take over at the end of this meeting. All right.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir, Ms. Burgess.
I'd like to nominate Colonel Leach for chair of
Okay.
RTA.
Okay, and just some, before you jump right in, I'll come back to you in just 1 second. I was gonna say, the way I was gonna do this is we'll just work our way through chair, vice chair, treasurer, and secretary. And then we'll open it to nomination. We'll open it to nomination. We'll vote on each, and then move on to the next. For some background, as you recall, to be chair or vice chair, you have to be a resident of Richland County. You also cannot, if you've been chair or vice chair in the previous term, which would be myself and Mr. Burgess, you cannot serve as chair or vice chair again. And the chair and the vice chair cannot be from the same two bodies in Richland County. So, in other words, as an example, you couldn't have two people who were appointed by Richland County Council serve as chair and vice chair. So, that's all according to our bylaws. Okay, so Ms. Burgess is nominated
Ron,
for the
excuse
lead.
me. Hey, Ron,
Yes,
excuse
sir.
me, this is Fanning.
Yes,
Let me
ma'am.
pull I think that the board, the bylaws say that the chair and vice chair needs to be residents of Richland County, not
Yes, ma'am.
appointed.
Correct. Thank you for clarifying. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
I have a nomination for chair from, for Mr. Leeks from Mr. Burgess. Do you accept that nomination, Mr. Leeks?
I do.
Okay, do I have any other nominations for chair? Okay, I would nominate Ms. Dickerson as chair. Ms. Dickerson, do you accept that nomination?
Yes, I will.
Okay, okay. Any other nominations for chair? Okay, barring none, I would suggest we just move to vote.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir. Is that Mr. Howard?
No, this is Huggins.
Yes, sir.
And I just want Ms. Dickerson to know that out of all respect for her, I have committed my vote to Mr. Leeks, but I do have strong admiration for Ms. Dickerson.
Okay. Okay, so I'll call, as I call your name, if you'll indicate who you're voting for, please. Are there any other nominations before I close it? Okay. Anderson is voting for Dickerson. Leeks?
For myself.
I'm sorry. Welcome, Councilman Kane. He's a new ad hoc member, advisory member from the town of Batesburg, Leesville, I believe. So welcome to our meeting. Mr. Leeks, you were voting?
Voted for Leeks.
Okay. Ms. Mood?
Dickerson.
Tarasia?
Dickerson.
Huggins?
Leeks?
Dickerson?
Dickerson.
Burgess?
Leeks. Colonel Leeks.
Howard?
Colonel Leeks.
Morris?
Colonel Leaks,
Smith?
Dickerson.
Ms. Clayton?
Colonel Leeks.
Okay, and correct me if I'm wrong, Paige, but that is 6-5, Colonel Leaks. Okay, I'm getting a head nod from Michelle, who's also in the room. Okay, so congratulations, Colonel Leaks. Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Can I get nominated? So for the rules, that means because Mr. Leeks was appointed, Colonel Leeks is appointed by Richland County Council, that means the vice chair would need to be either a City of Columbia appointee or a Richland County Legislative Delegation appointee.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I make a motion, I nominate Ms. Clayton.
Okay.
I cannot accept it. I cannot accept it. I have a lot on my plate right now. Thank you so much, Ms. Mood.
Okay. Sorry.
Okay, can I get other nominations for vice chair? So we need to be, that would leave Dr. Morris, Mr. Huggins, Mr. Howard.
Huggins cannot.
Okay, I'm just kind of throwing out the options here. So Howard and Morris, am I missing anybody else? And, yeah, that's it, right?
Morris
Could I
will
make a
not.
motion? Morris will not either, okay.
Okay. And, so that would leave, I'm not eligible. So that leaves Mr. Howard.
All right.
That will have to be planned.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
That is a conundrum, isn't it?
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
don't want to be in a situation where the board is not assuming responsibility. And at this current time, I know that if Mr. Colonel Leaks will accept being chair, it's my duty as a citizen to accept it. But I just need everyone to know that I am going through challenges with my wife, and I have to make sure that I am there for her. So if I am not able to attend meetings, please let them know that, please everyone know that it's not by design, it's just by my responsibility to take care of my family.
Okay. So from the way you're saying that, sounds like if I nominate you to be vice chair, you'd accept it.
Yes, sir, I will. I don't want to be in a situation where.
Vice chair. Okay. Does anybody else want to run for vice chair? Okay.
I move to, we close the nomination.
Okay. So moved. Okay. I'm going to call your name. Well, since he's the only nominee, there's no point in voting. He is now vice chair by acclamation. Okay. Can I get nominations for treasurer? I would nominate Mr. Smith. Mr. Smith. Ms. Burgess, you were going to nominate someone?
I was going to nominate Mr. Smith.
Okay.
I second that nomination, Huggins.
Okay. Anyone else want to be treasurer? Okay. I'm going to close the nominations unless someone objects. Mr. Smith will be our next treasurer. Okay. Secretary. I'm going to open the floor for nominations for secretary. I would nominate Ms. Tarazio. Anyone else want to run for secretary? Okay. Barring none, I'm going to close the nominations, and by acclamation, Ms. Tarazio becomes secretary of the board. Okay. And the fifth, you accept, Ms. Tarazio?
I do, thank you.
And Mr. Smith, you're good with that?
Yes.
Sorry about that, John. Pointed out I got moving too fast. Okay. The fifth member of the executive committee will be filled by Colonel Leaks, and that would be the chair of the service committee, and that'll be filled at a later point by Colonel Leaks. So, congratulations to all of you. Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I want to thank everyone. I really yield to Mr. Leak. He asked earlier, and then you all asked. I was asking. I would never decline if I could serve. So it's a pleasure for me. I'm like Mr. Huggins. I have a lot on my plate, and so dealing with my family and everything, I'm really happy to continue to serve on the board. Thank you, and bye-bye.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson. Okay, item 7. Amend section 8.1 of the bylaws to comply with state law. Ms. Heiser.
The material in the packet beginning on page, I think it's 105, relates to a proposed amendment to the bylaws to make the bylaws consistent with the Regional Transit Authority law. That you've got the language for a proposed revision to 8.1 and 8.2. I don't think that these are really substantive changes. They're more stylistic. And I think that they have been discussed at least at one earlier meeting, perhaps at the board retreat. So I'm glad to answer any questions that anyone has.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir, Mr. Dr. Morris.
would you to Attorney Hauser, would you please be specific in terms of what you're proposing to be changed?
Yes, sir. Let me get back to that page. I touched my screen, unfortunately, and let me get back, please. I apologize. I'll be at the right page here, hopefully in just a second.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Colonel Leaks.
Mr. Chair?
I believe that's Colonel Leaks, correct?
Yes. I thought we devoted to delay this particular item.
No, we didn't.
Did Ms. Mood vote that in her motion?
That was my error. I called the wrong number, Mr. Leaks. The bylaws part of a different agenda item, not this one.
All right, y'all. So the proposed amendments relate to sections 8.1 and 8.2 of the bylaws. The current version of 8.1 says the board may employ or contract with agents and employees. The board shall develop or cause the development of appropriate policies and procedures for the employment of personnel. The executive director and other fiscal personnel shall be bonded for amount as determined from time to time by the board. And then current section 8.2 talks about hiring an executive director who will be responsible for the administration of the authority under an approved annual budget. Obligations outside the budget can only be made with board approval. The executive director continues to serve at the discretion of the board. There'll be an annual review, and the employment or dismissal requires an affirmative vote of a simple majority of the membership of the board. And then all other staff shall be employed by and be responsible to the executive director. So the proposed the new 8.1 says that the board may employ or contract with an executive as provided in section 582540(6) of the Regional Transportation Authority law. B, the executive director may employ any employees as may be necessary for the proper administration of the duties and functions of the authority, and may determine the qualifications of such persons. The board shall develop or cause the development of appropriate policies and procedures for the employment of personnel to be hired by the executive director, and the board shall adopt a compensation plan for employees. And subsection C is the executive director and other fiscal personnel shall be bonded as determined by the board. Then section 8.2 talks about the duties of the executive director, who will be responsible for the administration of the authority under an approved annual budget by the board. Any obligations outside the budget shall be only with board approval. The executive director continues to hold the position at the discretion of the board. So 8.2, really, there are not many changes in 8.2. And 8.1, we basically just divided it up to make it a little more clear and read a little more clearly.
Okay, thank you, Attorney.
Okay, any other questions? Barring none, can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
I have a motion from Dr. Morris. Can I get a second? All second the motion. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, barring none, indicate your vote by saying yea or nay when I call your name. Anderson, yes. Leaks?
No.
Mood?
Yes.
Taratio? Huggins?
Yes.
Dickerson? Burgess,
No.
Howard,
No.
Morris,
No.
Smith,
Yes.
Gleason,
No.
okay, Tarazio, Dickerson,
Oh, hold on. He was, Tarazio just was exited out.
okay,
1 second.
she may have dropped off. Okay,
And he just came back on.
Tarazio, Allison,
Yes, we're still on
Yes.
on the most recent vote.
ma'am,
We're still on the vote for, could you remind me of the vote we just took?
this is a motion to amend the bylaws, and it's basically some non-substantive language change.
Okay, and then, so I vote yes.
Okay. Ms. Dickerson, are you on?
He's on there.
Joyce?
I just got back. I did not hear the question.
Okay, there's a motion on the floor to vote to amend section 8.1 of the bylaws, which is a non-substantive.
I vote no since I didn't hear it. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion fails?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, this is Huggins. Evidently, I did not hear the whole conversation. I was dropping off and on also. So if I can get Ms. Heiser, please, to go back over the points. I hate to belabor, but I just need to really hear exactly what I'm voting on. I thought I was voting on something totally different. I'm in and out
No, that's
between.
fine. That's fine.
Okay.
Franny, if
Okay.
you don't mind, go back and, for Joyce, Allison, and Hug Derek, recover real briefly what you just covered again, please.
Sure. If you have page 111, if you have access to page 111, it shows what the changes are in proposed changes in 8.1 and 8.2. And we've clarified 8.1 about the board employs the executive director as provided by law. The executive director employees as is necessary and determines the qualifications. The board develops appropriate policies and procedures for the employment of personnel hired by the executive director, and the board adopts compensation plans. Then the final sentence in the new 8.1 is the same as old 8.1, that the executive director and fiscal appointee shall be bonded for such amounts as determined by the board. There's really just no change in 8.2, the original language said the board may employ an executive director, and now it says
Can you get closer to a phone or a mic or something?
shall be who is responsible for the administration under an approved annual budget. So we've just clarified. In 8.1, you now hire the executive director, and the duties of the executive director are spelled out in 8.2.
Ms. Heiser, can you get closer to the phone? You're breaking up really badly.
All right, let me try again. Is this getting better?
Yeah, that is.
Okay.
Okay. Derek, Joyce, and Allison, does that clarify what's on the floor?
I really could not hear, and I don't want to belabor this. Is there any way we could motion to table this so we can really have a clear discussion on this? Because I couldn't hear really what Attorney Heiser was saying.
Well, there's a motion on the floor to approve there's been a motion to approve the amendment. At this point, you guys, and it's been discussed.
Well, Mr. Chairman.
And we were in the middle of voting, so I would say by Robert's Rules of Order, we need to finish voting. Is that correct, Ms. Heiser?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
May I just make a point of clarification?
Yes.
Reading the differences, I think it looks like what we were trying to clear up with these amendments was any confusion about the hiring of staff other than the executive director. And the original wording led to some confusion about whether the board could directly hire staff. I thought that was what the whole intent was of trying to be clear.
I think that's correct.
Am I mistaken in that?
I think you are, but we're kind of in a betwixt and between with Robert's Rules of Order here, so let me get Franny to clarify. Since we've already started voting, obviously 3 people couldn't hear what was going on, and we could clarify what the motion is, but there is a motion on the floor, and we're in the middle of voting on it. So I think we have to finish voting. Is that correct?
Yes.
Franny? Is that for anything yet?
So the new language and is the executive director may employ any employees as may be necessary for the proper administration of the duties and functions of the authority and may determine the qualifications of the person. Then the board develops policies and procedures for the employment of personnel to be hired by the executive director. And the board shall adopt compensation plans for employees. So with a motion already on the floor, if folks didn't hear the discussion or aren't comfortable voting, they could abstain.
But I do need to complete the voting process, correct?
Well, my vote still
The
remains.
voting on the motion should continue until concluded.
Okay, thank you.
My vote can continue. I'm Joyce, and it continues to be no.
Okay, Taracio and Huggins, how do you want to vote? You can vote yes, no,
And
or
Huggins is a
abstain.
no also. Huggins is a no
Oh.
also.
Okay, and Taracio?
I'll keep my vote as is.
Okay, and which was affirmative?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, do we have all the voting? I lost count of what the vote was. Mr. Howard, could you repeat your vote, please?
Oh, no.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we believe the motion failed with 6 noes? Okay. Okay, the motion failed. Okay, next up is, 7 noes, I apologize. So you got it all recorded? Okay. Okay, so next up is to amend the code of conduct policy. Ms. Heiser.
Did we vote on the 8.2?
That was all.
I was all one.
Yeah, it was actually all one. It's not properly recorded on the agenda, but yeah, it was all. Oh, boy.
Okay.
Franny, the agenda actually says amend section 8.1 of the bylaws to comply with state law. It doesn't mention 8.2. Does that matter?
No.
I don't think so.
Okay. Okay. Then we'll move forward. Amend code of conduct policy. Franny.
So this was an extensive revision of the code of conduct and ethics policy to make that policy consistent with the South Carolina Ethics Act. The goal is to have an updated ethics policy in place before the triennial review. This was discussed at, I think, the board retreat and has been available for board review. It is a lengthy document, and I don't know that you want me to take time to go through it all. Right now, if there are any questions, I'd certainly be happy to answer them. I don't think that this policy puts any more or less requirements on board members compared to what they have today under the State Ethics Act. It just spells it out much more clearly than a generalized statement.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Dr. Morris.
through you to Attorney Heisman. It has always been my concern if you are amending bylaws, tell me specifically what the new reading will be.
Well, I think what you were saying, Dr. Morris, is that it's pretty extensive, like what's been amended in here. You have it in the packet.
I understand, and I have read it. But my concern is if it's that important that we amend it, it should be important enough for our legal to tell us specifically what we are amending.
Okay, Franny, jump on in.
Sure, I'm getting back. I keep touching my screen. and the document goes away. Now, let me mention, just to remind you that I did discuss this at some length at the board retreat. And I'll go over the changes again. If there is any uncertainty or concern about not having enough information, I would respectfully request that you table this item instead of voting it down, because because these are the rules that you have to live by. And if the concern is that you haven't had enough time or for me to go over them, certainly tabling this and bringing it back at a time when there's more time at a meeting or at a special workshop or some such as that, I'd be glad to do that. So for right now, if you want me to continue on, all of this is new. The language that you're looking at is not currently in the bylaws or in the old code of conduct. So the background is that the bylaws do provide in section 11.1, excuse me, that the authority and its members must comply with the State Ethics Act. And section 11.3, excuse me, says that the authority will comply with all of the applicable resolutions of the state and federal procurement code. And there are some ethics related matters in the procurement area. So section 1 of this policy are all the relevant definitions. Anything of value really is anything that has value of more than $25. And there's a whole long list of what those things would be. There are a few things that anything of value don't include. For example, if you go to a conference and bring home a little squeezy toy that has a bus written on it, or something of value of $10 or less, or if you get a plaque that doesn't cost more than $150, those would be examples of things that would not be anything of value. Then business with which you are associated. An economic interest is an important concept that means an interest distinct from the general public. Then it talks about what this definition does not prohibit. There's definition of a family member, and I am now on page 114 of the document of the agenda, and you'll see at that point we begin identifying public member. You as board members are public members. Employees of the COMET are public employees, and so throughout this we have highlighted the things that would apply to public members or public employees. Pretty much the essence of the Ethics Act comes in the rules of conduct. That's section 2 of this policy. And the first thing is that you cannot use your official position or office for financial gain, and you must disclose potential conflicts of interest should you have one. And the conflicts of interest include not only you personally, but a family member or an individual or business with which you are associated. So for example, I think we've got one board member that is an employee of the university, and because that's a business with which he is associated, that board member disqualified, recused himself, and did not participate in a discussion that related to his employer. So that's an example of the requirements. Then the next section is basically that you cannot be bribed. You cannot, no one can offer you, and you cannot ask or solicit or receive anything of value to influence your decisions or your public conduct, the conduct of your public business. Moving on, I'm now on page 116. There are rules about speaking engagements. So if you were asked to speak at the Transit Association or you are asked to speak at a Rotary Club, then you can do that, but you cannot really receive anything of value other than a nominal token thank you for participating in that process. The next, I'm now on page 117. You cannot offer, solicit, or receive money or any advice or assistance that you may give. So if not that you as board members or employees are going to have a lot of sort of insider information, quote unquote, but this would prohibit the use of inside information, as does the next section that talks about the disclosure of confidential information. The next section really relates more to employees, but there are limits and restrictions on a public member or public employee accepting employment from the entity with which they were associated. So for example, if like one of the contractors that's used is maybe Brownstone or one of the transit associations, you can't go and work for them within a year of your public service. Then the bottom of page 18 is the remedies, and very rarely happens, but the State Ethics Commission does have jurisdiction, as does the Attorney General. And so what I've gone over now are matters that are covered by the State Ethics Act. And for you elected officials, y'all already know this and live under it. For board members, it's really pretty much don't take bribes, don't accept expensive gifts, and don't talk about confidential information. Those are three of the high points in this. Then section 3 are ethics provisions related to contracts and procurement. And in general, it talks about the openness and transparency, that we need to have open and free competition. Some of this is pretty technical. And then the last matter or general matters that talk about ethical principles dictate that no confidential or sensitive information should be be disclosed. And implementation, number 5. This is important, that the director, CEO of the authority shall be responsible for ensuring that all board members and employees are familiar with this policy. And that beginning in July 1 of this year, moving forward, each board member shall certify and execute a statement that they've reviewed this policy and that they're familiar with it. That any new board member must execute a document before becoming a member. That anybody believing that a employee or board member has violated the policy make a report submitted to general counsel. If the person making the report is not comfortable with that for any reason, they can submit the report to either the board chair or the executive director. The report shall be confidential until there's a determination there is sufficient information to go forward. And then the final pages are the affirmative certification that needs to be signed and the form of a report for violations. And I know that's a lot, and but that would be a very brief overview of what this policy includes.
Okay, Dr. Morris, do you have any follow-up questions?
No, thank you.
Okay. Do any other board members, anyone else have any questions? Okay, if not, can I get a motion to approve?
Mr. Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any questions. But I'd like to find out one thing. The changes in this particular thing, I've known since I've been on this board, we've gone through this. This is what I'm talking about, the redundancy. And this is a lot. And for those members who don't understand that, this should be something they should have a one-on-one, because I have been through this several times, and this is just like, killing a lot of time that we could do this at some other time. Thank you very much.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir.
let me say, a board member has the right to ask questions at any time, and I don't think the integrity of a board member should be questioned.
Okay. Well,
Thank you.
Dr. Morris, I'm not questioning anybody's integrity. I'm just saying that we have gone, you can ask questions anytime you want to, but this is something we have done several times, and out of respect for the rest of us, I think if a lot of people have a lot of questions, if that's a personal thing, then you should take care of it.
Council, Mr.
Chairman?
Chair,
Well,
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir, go ahead,
Mr.
Dr. Morris.
Chair, Council lady, I did not call your name, and please do not call mine. Thank you.
Okay, let's wrap
All
it up.
right.
Can I get a motion to approve the change?
I move approval of the policy as presented.
Okay, the code of conduct policy. We have a motion to approve the code of conduct policy. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
I have Ms. Horacio as second. I have a motion from Ms. Mood and a second from Ms. Horacio. Any further discussion?
That's what I'm believing.
Just real quick, Mr. Chair, this is Andy.
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure that I'm understanding that legal counsel is recommending we adopt this, and it's so that we're compliant with the FTA triennial review, right? I understood. Is my understanding correct?
That's correct. We're recommending the adoption at this time so that we'll be in compliance by the triennial review. And I think the next step in this passage is that the director would contact each board member and employees to make sure that they're familiar with what's in this document and get the signed certification so that that can be shared with the FTA inspector.
Hey, Franny, I don't know what you just did microphone-wise.
You
but
can't
your
hardly
audio
hear it.
quality- Your audio quality went really bad. You might want to find the good mic you had before and repeat what you just said.
You want me to repeat? Franny to repeat?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Yes, Franny, you repeat your response to Andy, please.
Okay, sure. And I apologize for these technical problems, but we're recommending adoption so that we will be in clear compliance when the FTA inspectors come in August. And if this proposal passes, if this policy is adopted, the executive director will make sure that each board member and employee is familiar with the requirements of the policy, and he will obtain a signed certificate from each board member and employee.
Okay, you good, Mr.
Okay, thank you.
Smith?
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or any other discussion?
Mr.
Okay,
Chairman,
fine,
I'd just like to add something. This is Mike Green.
Yeah,
I would
Mr.
like
Green,
to
if you could
challenge
get
all my-
closer, if you could speak up, Mr. Green, we can barely hear you.
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me better?
No,
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm here. Hey, Mr. Chairman, I would just challenge all the other board members to file a statement of economic interest, just as all the other elected officials have to do. I know we can't require that, but they can voluntarily submit that to the Ethics Commission. So I would challenge them to do that, or at least consider it.
okay, thanks, Ms. Green. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, barring none, all those, vote your, or yea or nay when I call your name. Anderson, yes. Lee?
Yes.
Is that yes, Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Okay, Mood?
Yes.
Tarasia? Okay.
Huggins, yes.
Huggins, yes. Okay, Dickerson?
Sorry.
Yes.
Tarasia?
And Teresia, yes. Yes, thank you.
Burgess?
Yes.
Howard? Howard? And Morris?
Yes.
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Okay. Smith?
Yes.
Gleason?
Yes.
Okay, motion carries unanimously, I believe. Okay.
did,
Okay.
it did.
Next up, yes. Does somebody, oh, okay. Okay, next up is amending communication policy number 6. I believe, Franny, this is what I had, the suggestion I had made. I was hoping somebody would reach out to Dr. Morris since he was originally part of creating it. And I'll just speak for myself why I put it on the agenda. I've had a lot of complaints over the last several meetings about the number of emails and communications and it being a disproportionate number. I was just trying to come up with a way to capture the intent, which is everyone has the opportunity to hear the responses to each other's questions without everyone getting 1,000 emails. So, Franny, if you could, I just threw it out there. I was trying to come up with something to make people a little bit happier. Franny, if you'll cover the changes, please. Franny?
They went on lost them.
Hold on.
Can y'all hear us better now?
I can hear you. I can't hear Franny.
Okay, this is Franny. We've,
Switch to
we switched to the conference phone, so we're not going through the computer right now any longer. So I'm sorry, if there was a question, I missed it. I'll be glad to answer it if you restate it,
So
please.
we were on to amending the communication policy number 6. And what I
Sure.
was saying is that was put on the agenda at my request, mostly because I've had a lot of complaints from various board members about the volume of emails. And those are largely generated by the way policy 6 is currently written. So Franny, I'm going to let you explain what we came up with, and then I'll defer to the board.
This obviously is a policy that the board adopted a few years ago. The proposed change would create a different method of communicating where numbers of emails, instead of being copied to all board members, would be sent to a Dropbox or a virtual destination, so that board members would be able to check periodically or be told to go look at the box without the necessity of receiving all the various emails that go back and forth amongst the board.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Dr. Morris.
through you to Attorney Houser, how would this cover the package that some of the board members have been receiving? Would that be excluded?
Yes, sir. I don't believe that this change in policy would impact the delivery of the board packets. So I think written material that's now being delivered would continue to be delivered to those board members.
Thank you.
Okay, could we make that clear here?
Yes,
So,
sir.
Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, I'll get to you in a second, Ms. Lanusse.
Sure.
Go ahead, Franny.
The answer to that is yes, and if there is a motion to approve this, the motion could include the requirement that clarification be added.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, Dr. Morris, my intent was purely, the way the policy is written now, if one of us asks a question of John, he has to copy us all back. And then if there's a follow-up question to the first question, he has to copy us on that too. And so what that's generating is there may be a question that you're not particularly interested in the subject matter and you get 25 emails on it. So this should help make sure you still can see all that if you're interested in it, but cut down the mail volume, so, on things like that.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, actually, Ms. Mood had a question, and then I'll get to you, Mr. Lee.
Okay.
So if I'm understanding correctly, really what this does is it shifts the initiative to the board member. If they want to be informed of communications that are going back and forth, it shifts the responsibility to us to go to a different place to look for those rather than have them just show up in your email. Is that the impact of this?
Yes, ma'am.
Mm-hmm. Okay, you promise not to make us have a different password for that?
We're going to work on a way to get in and out of it relatively easily. Colonel Lee.
Yeah, I was just wondering. I thought when we put this policy in place a few years ago, we did it in order to keep board members included in the loop, so to speak. And I'm just wondering if we went to the proposed policy here, how would that affect that? I mean, it's a lot of times that you just forget about going to a Dropbox somewhere, I would imagine. And so I'm just thinking that would that be better or not? And my final suggestion is that if you get the emails, I got a delete button on mine. That takes me 1 second to hit it if I don't want to read something. So I'm just wondering the value of this, really.
Well, yeah, you're correct. And this was my idea purely in response to the feedback I was getting from a number of board members, both voting and advisory, that the volume of the back and forth on the questions and the follow-up was just very onerous.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Ms. Green.
Sorry. Yeah, I mean, so for our city manager, he does not have to reply to every board member every time one board member asks a question. And I think that would just make sense here as well. I mean, if some board member asks, what size the bus is, or how big the bus is, he would not have to respond to all the board members and say the bus is 53 feet long. I don't know if it is or not, but I think it just makes sense. And I understand about the delete button, but when you're deleting 20 to 30 emails, and they're constantly coming in, it does put some pressure on people to do that. When it's a very minute question that's being asked, that one board member might be interested in it. And I'm not taking away from one board member asking questions. I'm just saying that to tell every board member every single question that's asked of another board member is cumbersome. And that's all. Thank you.
Okay. I know there's a number of other elected officials, both advisory and as voting members of the board. Any of y'all have any other wisdom from the various service on your bodies? I think we represent about 4 or 5 different elected bodies here. And then Andy, you're an administrator for Forest Acres. So if any of y'all want to chime in, that'd be helpful.
Mr. Leon Howard.
Yes, Mr. Howard.
Yes, sir. I'll agree with Mr. Green that, if one of us have a question, everybody don't need to be involved in it. So that's my experience. If you have a question, then the entire board gets the answer. So I don't think that's necessary. I agree with Mr. Green 100%. I think that will cut down on some of the mail traffic as well.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir, Ms. Paradis.
We should not lose while this was put in effect. We have board members, coming on board, and to bring them up to speed, we put them in the loop of all board communication. So to say overwhelmed, we don't get that many mail. Most of our mail that we overwhelmed by comes from the EDGP. It's not information requested by a board member. So we don't get a lot of that, but we use that to make sure that every board member know what's going on with the comment.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I was around for the original development of the policy, and I agree. That's why I was trying to split the baby. So you'd still be able to see everything and have an opportunity to review all this communication. It just wouldn't come directly to your mailbox unless it was communication that needed to go to the board for a board meeting or something like that. So otherwise, it would just go to a box that you could go and review before each meeting or whenever you felt like it.
Mr. Chair, this is Andy.
Yes, sir.
You asked for my my thoughts. I don't think that we have at the city a specific policy. It is really a matter of courtesy to include everybody. So I don't know that that's, and we're also a really small body here, 5 council members. And so, but to the point that was just made, there was a history of people feeling like they were left out, and I, myself included. There have been times where I feel like I didn't have information, not anybody's fault, not because of anybody's fault, but I didn't have information that other board members had, and it was because there was a side conversation and that sort of thing. And I think that was kind of a universal feeling on the board. So I think I agree with the policy. I do like the idea of trying to move as much of it off of our email onto a common portal. I think that's a good solution. But it is, as Lil said, it'll be incumbent on us to make sure we are attentive to it and go and look at it. So.
Thank you. Do you have any other questions or comments? Okay. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion we adopt that policy.
Okay, I have a motion for Mr. Smith. I'll second it. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, barring none, indicate your position by saying your name when I call your name. Anderson, yes. Leaks?
No.
Mood?
No.
Taratio?
Yes.
Huggins?
No.
Dickerson? Dickerson? Burgess?
Burgess, no.
Howard? Howard?
No.
Morris?
No.
Smith?
Yes.
Gleason?
No.
Okay, I believe Mr. Huggins and Ms. Dickerson, are either of you on the line? Dickerson?
Huggins, no.
Huggins is no? Okay, sorry about that. Ms. Dickerson? Okay, motion fails, I believe. Okay. Next up is,
Mr. Chair,
yes, ma'am.
just on that note, even though that one failed, there are other technologies available to folks. You know, depending on what people wanted to learn, I think Teams probably has some kind of communication function. People like to do Slack channels and things like that. So, to the extent that a board member would want to learn new technology, we can still seek other opportunities to communicate in better ways.
Yes, ma'am, I think we just direct John to look into it. So, okay, thank you. Okay, next up is intergovernmental agreement revisions. Ms. Heiser.
I believe this agenda item begins on page 133.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Dr. Morris.
is this the item that indicated begins on 126?
I'm sorry, repeat your question.
On my package, it says pages 126 through 173. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, go
So
ahead, Ms. Heiser.
I think actually the agenda that I'm looking at says page 126 to page 173, but as I scroll through the package, the first page that I see is page 133. So I don't know page what 126 is. I think that is still part of the policy from the prior agenda item.
That is correct.
Yes, 133.
Well,
Yeah, you'd be on page 133 of the agenda.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
since it is printed incorrectly, may I make a comment on page 126, about 126?
Sure. That is, Yeah, what is this?
My,
Yeah, go ahead.
okay, my concern is that we worked long and hard to develop policies, and I would hope that we do not recommend too hastily about changing them. I see directive to the comment staff will be given as a body through the executive director to staff. Now, the communication committee, we discussed this long and hard, and we did not say that. So please ask folks not to change unless we go back to committee. Also, it's a committee agenda should be prepared by the executive director with consultation with the chair of each committee. My concern is each chair of a committee should have the authority to put an item or items on the agenda of the committee. And I would hope that we are not trying to blindside us in pushing these through.
Well, if I'm correct, 126 should have been, the numbers should have been 124 through 132, which means that was part of the previous item, the amendment to Communication Policy 6. Am I correct?
You're correct.
Yes, so
Mike,
which that item has failed. So
yeah, I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that. My only concern was it should never have been there. These two items that I just mentioned.
Well, with all due respect, the chair can put what they want on the agenda.
You're right, Mr. Chair, but the chair in the ED doesn't have the right to change anything that committees have approved.
Right. They can bring forward, well, in any case. Okay, let's move on to the item D. Your concerns noted. Item in D, page 133. Ms. Heiser.
So this relates to proposed amendments to the IGA. By way of background, I think this matter was discussed at the executive committee level and brought forward here to the this board meeting, and the material does in fact begin on page 133 of the agenda. By way of background, also, you know that the last IGA was approved in 2013 after the penny was passed. That since 2013, federal law has changed so that there's now federal money available to the Comet based on the populations in both Richland and Lexington counties. That federal money can now be used for operations, which it could not back in before 2015. So as a result of the availability of those funds, there's more service being offered in Lexington County, including the cities of West Columbia, Casey, Springdale, Irmo, some in Batesburg, Leesville, and the town of Chapin. Each of those entities has requested through a letter to become a member of the authority, and the town of Eastover has had a request to become a member outstanding for some time. So state law.
Ms. Eisinger.
Yes, sir.
You were saying these things were requested. These cities were recruited. That's a big difference.
Well, I understand your point, and all I know is I've seen letters from these groups. I think Mr. Ando or someone else would want to talk about the sort of communication and the dynamic between the Comet and these various municipalities. I do know that that Lexington County has for a number of years had an agreement where Lexington County basically collected money from the other entities in the county to pay for the service that was being provided. Lexington County very much wants to get in a position, I think, to pay its share and have each of the other entities, political subdivisions, pay their own share. So that's something that I have knowledge about. But again, recruited, applied. All I know is that there are letters out there, and I've been working on revisions to the IGA that would be consistent with state law and allow those new groups to, the new entities to become members. I have said all along that this is a policy decision.
One other question. Now, this item failed at the executive committee, failed at the service committee, failed at the finance committee. Now, who is recommending that it goes forward? Is this
It's
something
purely
that
on the agenda, Mr. Burgess. The board will need to determine how to dispose of the request.
Well, just a minute, please, Mr. Chairman. I believe that this item wasn't discussed. It came to us, to the board directly from the executive committee, and I don't recall it coming to the service committee because I thought the recommendation from the executive committee was that it needed to be considered by the full board. So I don't recall any discussion at the service, at the committee that reviewed it was the executive committee, not service and finance.
Well, no, I had asked for it to be on the agenda of service and finance, but it was removed from both agendas.
It was removed from both agendas, it was.
So it's incorrect to say that it failed.
That's right. It didn't fail. It was removed from the agenda.
But Mr. Chairman,
correct.
If you had directed it, that they go to these committees, who took it off? Because I being the chair of the service committee, I never would have deleted this without us hearing it.
I believe it was on your agenda, and my understanding, I wasn't at the meeting, my understanding is that the service committee voted to remove it from the agenda at the beginning of the meeting.
My recollection is that we were told by Mr. Fergus that it was being removed, that it did not need to come to the committee because the executive committee wanted it to go straight to the board.
For clarification, it doesn't have to do any of that, okay? It's been to executive, it's been to the board twice, so it's on our agenda today. We can vote to approve it, we can vote to disapprove it, we can vote to modify it. So, Franny, can you clarify that that's legal?
I think this matter is legally on your agenda, and I think you have options, all the parliamentary options, approve it, disapprove it, table it. There was discussion at the executive committee that because other political subdivisions that represent 90% of the population in the service area, being Richland, the city of Columbia, and Lexington counties, those bodies also need to approve it. Some discussion at the executive committee that why does it come to the RTA first and then to the other groups. I did have a response for that, which is that the other groups, the other political subdivisions really don't have the sort of the expertise or the, to me personally, it makes sense that it originate with the RTA, even if it's just to send it to the other political subdivisions for them to say yes, no, or to modify it. So just let me make a couple of more comments, and then I'm sure there'll be a lot of discussion. The most recent version that I sent out, I think last week, includes a couple of changes that were not in the version discussed at the executive committee. And those two changes are that each of Richland and the city of Columbia would get one additional vote on the board, and that in order to be basically considered for membership, an entity would have to have had service for 2 full years, and that's 48 months, or 24 months, just 2 full years. And that suggestion was made because we had the situation with Blythewood where they had some service. It was more on a trial basis, and they didn't think it was working, so they did not want to become a member and wanted the service canceled. So those are the two changes since the document went to the executive committee. There have been some legal questions. Most of those questions I think are fairly easily answered. I honestly believe that the struggle here is the policy decision, not the legal decision. But I'll be glad to try to answer any additional legal questions that y'all might have.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Hold on 1 second. Yeah, hold on 1 second, Dr. Morris. Was somebody else asking to speak after Dr. Morris?
Yes, that was Mike Green. Just put me on the
Okay,
list.
Mr. Green, I've got your name. Okay, Dr. Morris, go ahead.
Yes, through you to Attorney Hines. I noticed that you are still changing the number of members from the counties. Now, is this the correct one you're giving us now? And let me go on and say this. One of the counties donate about 1% of our funds. Richland County donate $18 million. Presently, one of the counties have 9% voting power, and Richland County has 91% voting power. The other county is asking for 40% voting power and allowing Richland County to have 60%. I don't think that is right. That is not fair. Don't take my dollars and try to spend them in another county. I'm finished, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Ms. Heiser, can you address there were 2 or 3 statements in there that are not, can you address those, please?
Certainly. The question about relative contribution and whether it's fair for a group to be a member or not a member is not a legal question. That is a policy decision. The law that we're operating under, when it was originally passed, allowed for the financial contribution to be considered when apportioning the membership of the board. In a subsequent amendment, that language was taken out, so financial contribution is not a factor anymore. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just telling you what the law says. So the law says that if a political subdivision becomes a member, they must have at least 1 vote. And so, that's the law. I can't change that, and that's why it becomes a decision that both this board has to agree on and Richland County, City of Columbia, and Lexington County. Now, there are financial reasons that I think some would recommend this, and John may be best to describe that, but there is a fairly significant amount of federal money that becomes available to the Comet because of the population in the urbanized area or in the metropolitan area that includes a good bit of Lexington County. And Lexington County matches those monies with legally available funds, but there is a fair amount, I don't know the number, John would know the number, of federal money that is then used by the Richland County side as a result of the fact that the matches aren't totally met in Lexington. But again, John could give you those numbers. I don't really have that off the top of my head.
Mr. Chair, may I follow up?
Yes, sir.
If that's being the case, are you saying that finance directly proportion to membership?
No, sir. I'm saying that they're two different. Deciding the number of members of the board must be apportioned among the membership of the authority based upon population in the service area, and that the relative financial contributions are not a factor. So that's why legally, if these groups that have requested membership, if they become members, then the size of the board increases, and the city of Casey, West Columbia, and town of Springdale and Eastover would each receive one vote on the authority. There were, a month ago, Batesburg, Leesville, and Chapin were included in that list. Neither of those municipalities have received service for 2 years, for 24 consecutive months. So in this version of the IGA, they would not become members, and the efforts to keep the balance as even, as fair as possible, I guess, were the given an extra vote to Richland County and the City of Columbia. But I'm not, that's just the effort that has been made so far.
But, Attorney, my understanding is that federal funds are directly proportional to the local funds. And that being the case, if we get only $200,000 from one county, we are getting federal funds on a certain percent of that. I don't think that is right.
No, Dr. Morris, you're not stating that correctly. So we have money coming from multiple streams. One of them is, hold on, there's several streams of money coming in. There's the Richland penny, that's the biggest stream. There are federal dollars that come through the state and the COG, and those are based on the size of the metropolitan planning area, the transportation planning area, which is basically the urbanized portions of Lexington and Richland County. Okay? There are state dollars that are also coming into the comment through the state, and they are a portion on the urbanized portion of Lexington County and Richland County. So those are the dollars that she was referring to. Now, those are match dollars. So what's happening is Richland County has more than enough contribution to draw down its entire match. Lexington County can only draw down the match for what they are putting money in for, which is the $250,000 or so. Okay? So the balance of those federal dollars that would normally flow to Richland County, that would normally could flow to Lexington County, Richland County is drawing down all those dollars, and we're spending all of them in Richland County. Does that clarify what, does that make more sense? Dr. Morris?
Yes, but a couple of things there. You indicated it was not accurate. It's $200,000 that they contribute the past year. Now, I don't see any numbers in terms of that increasing for this fiscal year we're in right now.
Dr. Morris, John Ando here. I need to correct you on that. Since 2018, Lexington County, Casey, West Columbia, Springdale, and the Lexington Medical Center have agreed to increase their contributions proportionately. Before I got here, their contributions were basically along the same. In 2018, we went up 2%. In 2019, we went up 2%. And in 2020, we went up 10%. So they've been increasing proportionate with the expenses of the services that are in their respective jurisdictions.
And what's the total?
So this fiscal year, collectively between the county, Casey, West Columbia, Springdale, Lexington Medical Center, Chapin, Batesburg, Leesville, they're about $267,000.
Collected.
Before then, they were in the 200 to 220 range.
And Mr. Ando, can you say?
We're going to get to you. You're next up on the list. Okay. Dr. Morris, does that answer all your questions?
Well, not really, because my concern is that the small amount that they are contributing and then asking for 40% of the votes, something is wrong with that.
I agree.
Okay, Mr. Green, you've been waiting patiently.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Being an advisory board member and representing the city of West Columbia, we have increased our total to the Comet over the last couple of years. And I would also, just like to add that I appreciate all the service that we have received, but at the same time, we've got to understand that we are stronger together as a whole region than we are as being separate counties. You know, I mean, Lexington County could form their own system if they so chose to, or Richland County could keep their system as they so choose to. But, yeah, I mean, I think we all understand that within 10 years or so, you know, I mean, the money is going to run out in Richland County. And we have to come up with a way to potentially provide bus service for people who need it at that time. And I don't know whether Richland County will, at that point in time, decide to continue to contribute the maximum amount of maybe, I think, $28 million or something to that effect. So, I mean, this is a way to potentially branch out and to get more money from Lexington County and from the municipality. I'm not saying that we have to go to 40% voting membership. You know, you could take us down to 20% voting membership. Just as I think it would just be fair that we get a little bit more voting membership in the comment board. Because, I mean, our money has been constantly increasing, and we're trying to work with you guys and it will probably increase even more, because we have the potential to do a penny sales tax over here in Lexington County that could potentially fund even more if we so choose to. And that would add another 10 years maybe, or another 5 years to the comment. Now, my question for Mr. Ando is, how much federal funding does, I mean, since we've increased the bus service in Lexington County, how much more federal funding are we getting because of Lexington County contributing and the bus system over there with the population size?
Councilmember Green and members of the board, collectively, as of this last allocation, we're about 5.5 million. 2 years ago, we were about 4.9 million, and the year prior to that, I believe we were like 3.8 million. So collectively, the population growth in both Richland and Lexington counties, coupled with the increase in ridership over the past 5 years, has caused our allocation to continuously increase.
John.
So
right.
It'll be,
and that has been,
2020 census that's
I
coming.
still have the floor.
No, go ahead.
And so that has been a call, and the reason for the uptick in the federal funding is because of the potential of the new bus routes that have happened in Lexington County and the ridership over there. Is that correct?
Money is going up because the population is going up.
Mr.
Now,
Chair.
I've got you, Mr. Leaks. We'll get to you in a minute. Okay,
Yeah.
go ahead,
And
Ms. Green.
listen, I completely understand what is going on. I'm just asking for a little bit of favor here, and for us to come to some sort of agreement on this. I do not think, first of all, I'm not speaking for Lexington County, but I don't think Lexington County is trying to take over the Comet bus system. They do not want to force all kinds of bus routes over in Lexington County and have Richland County pay for it. That's not the case. We just want a little bit of say on the board. And I will guarantee you that if that happens, I would say the exact same thing over, that we're not going to take money from Richland County to force bus service over in Lexington County. I would just say that we have residents over there in Lexington County that has needs just as much as you have in Richland County, that they need a bus system over there. And this is the best way for us to cooperate and act as one unit for the region rather than to act as two individual counties. We have done so much together in the past. And Mr. Chair.
I just want to continue that cooperation.
I'll get you in a minute, Ms. Hargan.
Thank you. That's all I have right now.
Okay. After Mr. I've got Colonel Leaks, then myself, then Ms. Summers, and then Mr. Huggins. Okay, Colonel
Okay,
Leaks.
I'm on. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Well, first of all, John put those numbers together when he said the 4 million, 5 million. He was talking about the contribution from Richland County and Lexington County, and Lexington County is contributing or causing to be contributed only 2.5 million or thereabout. So that was misleading. But my whole situation is this: if these municipalities are members or become members, then I can see them getting votes. But not a single one of them is a member of the authority. Not a single one. And the state law specifically tells how you have to go about becoming a member. And writing a letter is not one of those ways. You have to fill out a package, and I'm looking at the section right now. You can read it for yourself. Section 58-25-30. It tells what you have to do. And among those things you have to do a 5-year plan on how you're going to pay for it. You have to do a 1-year plan on how you have to pay for it. You have to take it through the municipalities and let their board of directors or whomever they have over there bring this to fruition. And it also has to be, in many cases, voted on by the constituents in that area. Writing a letter doesn't mean one thing. So basically what I'm saying, not a single one of these entities, with the exception of Lexington County, is a member. So is a member of the authority. So how can they have vote on the authority when they're really not a member? So that's what we need to get clear first. And one other thing now, according to what we wanted Attorney Heiser to do, was go and get clarification on how you become a member of an authority from the Attorney General. And I don't see how the Attorney General can change it, how he would change the laws when they're right here. And the last time this law was updated was May 21st, 1997. And so that's what we need to start figuring out how they become members. And if they become a member, then I could see allocating votes a certain way. But if they're not members, they can't do it. So that's what I have.
Well, to be clear, that's what they're asking to become members. That's what's on the table. They've written a letter asking to become a voting member. Okay. So Franny, why don't you address the question about what is required to become a member besides us voting for it and the bodies that constituted the entity, and then if you'll respond to your approach to the Attorney General. Franny?
No, I'm pulling up the statute. So the authority was created in 2002, recreated in 2011, and the current IGA of 2013 supplements the 2011 agreement. So we have an activated authority. And so section 582540 parens 3 says, subsequent to the activation of the authority, contiguous counties or municipalities not participating initially may become members of the authority with the same benefit as the initial members pursuant to the section set forth in 582530 and with approval of a majority of the board of the authority. So I think that the entities that have requested membership, new membership, are contiguous municipalities, and I'm going to go to the other code section in a second. And so the first step is that, or a step is that the majority of this board, the authority board, must approve their request for membership. So Mr. Leaks is correct that they are not now members. And the process that has undertaken is the question of whether or not they're going to be accepted as members. So that code section takes you back to 582530. And it says
approach to the Attorney General.
Mr. Chairman?
I've got you, Ms. Mood. Hold on.
Okay.
So to activate a regional transportation authority, the following steps must be taken. Now, it doesn't say who takes them, and doesn't say who has to draft it. It just says the following steps must be taken. And the first is a plan of service must be prepared. The plan of service must be consistent with any locally adopted transportation plan for the area to be served, and must include but not be limited to the following items: the area to be served, the procedures to be used to serve the area, the estimated capital and operating costs by year for the first 5 years of operation, the mechanism to be used to raise local funds necessary to support the operation, and finally, the source and amount of funds to be available to finance the first year's capital and operating costs. So there is a plan of service that has been prepared. This board voted on it and apparently approved it. I don't remember when, but John would be able to give that to you. And so the plan of service that includes all the things that are required does in fact exist. And there's nothing in the RTA law that talks about an application or requires any particular procedure to be followed in terms of meeting the requirements of the law. So the requirements of 58, 25, 30 as far as a plan have been met. Now there's one other requirement, and that is that the governing bodies of municipalities and counties, which include at least 90% of the population of the proposed service area, must approve the appointment or the acceptance of new members. So that's the best I can give you. I have talked to the Attorney General's office. They can't make stuff up. I mean, the law doesn't say that there has to be this or that. The law says there has to be a plan. The law says there has to be approval by this board and approval by governing bodies representing 90%.
May I have a follow-up question, Mr. Chair?
I'm gonna,
Chair.
yeah, Mr. Lee, go ahead, follow up.
Okay, my follow-up question then, if the municipalities are not making their plan for service in their area, I'm just wondering who made it. Are we paying our? Apparently, it has to be our CEO.
We did.
We
did. You voted for it. I voted for it. We all voted for it.
Look, no, I didn't vote for it. Are we paying our CEO to go out in municipalities, independent municipalities, and make up service plans for them and decide how they're going to pay for service, how they're going to, that 5-year plan, that 1-year plan, and also to put it before their constituents, where 90% of the people need to participate in. I don't understand how in the world we think we can do that, how they can do that without going through those procedures. Because you got to have support from
what you do to draw up a service plan, what you do with each municipality.
You got to have support from those municipalities, and I don't think our CEO has authority to do that. It has to come from them. And they're not members, and that's the only way they can become members.
Mr. Leach, members of the board, there's been 3 service plans that have been prepared. One in 2002, and that was done by our legal counsel in a conjunction with the COG when the authority was created. Another one was done in 2011 when the agency was reconstituted. The effort that we did in 2019 was to basically update the 2011 plan of service, because the 2011 plan of service did not replicate the levels of service that we're running today. This was before the CEO joined the comment. You had bus service, you had buses running in Eastover, you had buses running in the Northeast, you had buses running to Irmo. So we needed to ensure that our plan of service was consistent with the locally adopted plans, which the COG is responsible for preparing.
So when did we vote for that plan?
February of 2019 was the latest update.
So the service plan is done, and we voted for it affirmatively and approved it. So, and that includes, so when we run service through Springdale or we run service through Casey, that's all in that plan, as is the requirement that they don't get any service if they don't pay. And John goes in and negotiates with each of those communities on how much it will cost, and then they, based on our fixed rate of service, our hourly service rate, and then they come up with the money. It's up to them to come up with the money, which they do. So, I mean, I think that's pretty settled.
Mr. Chair. Mr.
Sir?
Chair, this is my
Yes.
last comment.
Okay.
I understand I understand about the service area, but what I'm saying is that in order to become a voting member, that's the big hiccup. Becoming a voting member, telling us how to spend the money, who to elect the CEO, and whatever might go on. You have to be a member of the authority, and that's my only thing. They're not a member of the authority, so you know they can't become a member of the authority until they go through this thing that's on 5825-30. And all I want to do is, if Batesburg, Leesville fill out one of those 50, fill each one of these tasks that's listed in that law, and the same thing for the other cities, run through their municipalities, and if they qualify then to become a member of the authority, let them become a member of the authority. Let them get voting power at that time.
They have to.
But
the
until
only
they
way
do
you
that,
become a member is to meet the requirements, and then this body and the bodies representing 90% of the service area, which is effectively, we have 4 bodies, Lexington, that are voting members. So Lexington County, Richland County, City of Columbia, and Town of Forest Acres. So 90% of the population of those needs to vote. So those, if the 3 biggest bodies were to vote to approve this, then it would pass after we do it. Do you understand?
Yeah, I understand that, but I still hadn't seen their proposal. I saw something that John wrote.
That's what's in front of you right now. Is we start the process, and then we send it. We forward it. I forwarded the request to those bodies.
We can't solve that.
And then they've asked us to develop an IGA. We've done that. This board needs to determine what that IGA looks like, and either vote for it, vote against it, don't do anything, whatever. And then if we approve it, then it goes forward to the City of Columbia, Richland County Council, Lexington County Council, and Town of Forest Acres for them to approve it. That's the process. That's what our lawyer says is the process.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Howard, I have a question.
Yeah, I've got you. I'll get you at the end, Mr. Howard. Okay. Ms. Summers, you're next.
Mr. Chair, this is Huggins. I'm up.
You're right after Ms. Summers.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity.
You can pull your mic a little closer.
Okay, is that better?
Yes.
Okay. I have sat here and taken in all that's being said and tried to figure out what the elephant in the room is. And we're talking about either control or inclusiveness. And when this body was created, it was called a regional transit authority. Its intention was to be regional. And throughout the history of the Midlands, because that's what we are, we really aren't divided. We truly are considered the Midlands. For a very long time, even when I was a child, these areas of our community came together to create an airport. And then it was a zoo, the convention center, organizations like the River Alliance or LORADAC. All of these things show community support and regionalism. And these organizations have fair representation because it's a regional effort to move forward, to take the Midlands to the next level. Financially, Lexington County will always pay whatever we need to pay. We do not ever want anyone to pay our way. But we are understanding that transportation for us is going to look different down the road than it does today. And the other thing is, it'll always look different for Richland County. It's just going to be different. But we honestly anticipate that as our population continues to grow, that we are going to need public transportation, and we want to have it. And we want to come to the table. We want to be a part of the decision-making. We don't want to take over. We do not want the leadership. We don't want the total number of votes. We just want to be able to come to the table like we have in so many organizations here in the Midlands. There are safeguards in place for Richland County, whether it's the number of people voting or whether it's the leadership of this organization. Lexington County does not want that. That's not what we're here about. But we are about our future. We are about planning. We do see us growing, and we want to be at this table with you, Richland County. We want to serve with you, work with you.
No.
We don't want control. We want to work together. But I don't know what it is that you're afraid of or intimidated by or threatened by. And I use those words. Those are very hard words, and they're not words that I use on a regular basis. But it's very evident. We don't want control. We want to be included. We want to come to the table. We want to help grow this regional transit authority. And if the greater community, the greater public understood what was going on in this organization,
No, for her.
it would not be a wonderful thing for them to understand. So I thank you. I thank you for the time. We want to be partners. We want to be players in this success of what we feel like this regional organization can bring to the Midlands.
Do you have any questions or anything else? No. Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, everybody
Mr. Huggins, Mr. Huggins, you were been waiting patiently.
I defer. Go ahead, Mr. Burgess.
Actually, Ms. Moo's next.
Okay, I think I have a different understanding of what Mr. Leaks was reading. I thought that when I went to look in the Code of Laws, and he was describing the things that are required of a regional transit authority. All of those those 5-year plans and 1-year plans and things. That's what's required of a regional transit authority, and that's what we had to do to be a regional transit authority. But I don't believe that those were required of every single member of the authority. I mean, Richland County doesn't have to come with a separate plan of service from the regional plan for service, and Forest Acres doesn't have to come with a separate plan of service every 5 years from the plans are developed by the authority, and that's all of us. And so I think we're confusing the requirements for an authority with the requirements for membership.
Well, since you
Mr. Chair, I defer to Mr. Burgess. I'm sorry, I defer to Mr. Burgess. I did not realize I was referring to Ms. Moog. So can I ask the question of, can we table this? And
let me wrap up with Ms.
I'm sorry,
Moog.
can you hear me?
Ms. Moog, do you have any questions? Are you done?
I'm done.
Okay.
Okay.
Mr.
I
Huggins, go
defer to
ahead.
Mr. Burgess. I thought I was deferring to Mr. Burgess. But if I would just like to know if we can table this, because this is a long conversation. And I really don't believe that we're going to have any answers over the next hour. So is there a possibility for us to be in a situation where you can put this in, table this, and put it in a situation where we can get together? You announce who the ad hoc committee is, and I enjoy Council Green's conversation also, and just for us to have a conversation about how we're going to move forward in this way, because this is going to go on a long time.
Well, that's an option, is that you can make a motion to table.
I want to make some motion to table this.
Okay, Franny, just out of deference to Robert's rules, can you just make a motion in the middle of discussion to table?
Yes, you can.
Okay, so I have a motion to table. Do I have a second?
I second it.
I'm sorry, who's that?
Leaks, second it.
Mr. Leaks. I have a motion from motion from Mr. Huggins and a second from Mr. Leaks. And the motion is purely to table?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to amend Mr. Huggins' motion to call a vote, if he will accept that.
Well, you're calling So there's nothing to call a vote on, Mr. Burgess. We don't have the only motion on the table is only motion on the floor is a motion to table.
The same thing we table on is the, call a vote on.
Yes, sir, that's what I'm doing. We have a motion and we have a second. I'm just opening discussion. So you're saying you're calling the question?
Amendment, a vote on it.
Okay, so you're calling the question is what you're doing.
That's correct.
Okay. I have a motion to table and I have a second. The question has been called with no discussion. Okay, indicate your vote.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. Point of order.
Yes,
this
sir.
is, well, a point of information. This vote is only to call the question, correct?
Actually, the motion on the floor is to table, correct, Franny?
Well, no, I mean, but
Mr. Fergus said to call the
that.
question. Mr. Fergus asked you to call the question. That's before you get the vote on the item.
Okay.
Correct. Technically, you vote. Oh, okay. Technically, you vote on whether to call the question, and then you vote on the motion to table.
And that takes 2/3 to call the question, correct?
I honestly don't know. I'll have to look that up.
Because you're ending debate, you're limiting the rights of the minority representatives. I mean, so you're calling. I believe it takes a 2/3 majority to call the question.
Okay. So to go in order here, if I understand what everybody's telling me, Ms. Burgess has called the question, which means we now need to vote whether to call it. Do I need a second to call the question?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so I need a second to call the question. If that passed, then we would vote. It would take 2/3, affirmative 2/3 of the body to call the question. Okay.
Correct.
Got it. Okay. Okay, so Ms. Burgess has called the question. Is anyone second?
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I am going to withdraw that because I really want individuals to be in a situation where we can get in a room and talk this thing out. So I don't want to be in a situation where we vote things down based on 2/3 of a vote. This is a big move for the city of Columbia, the city of Lexington, and I just believe that we can work together to figure out how we're going to move forward.
Well, your motion to table is still would be disposed of after we vote to call or not call a question. Okay, so we have to work through the things one at a time. Got it?
I got it, but the spirit of what I'm doing is trying to make sure that we understand how important this is, and we need to be on one accord. So that's where we are.
I understand, but from Robert's Rules of Order, there's a call, a question, and so we're going to go ahead, and has anyone seconded calling this question?
I did.
Okay, I have a motion to call the question and a second by Dr. Morris. Okay, it requires 2/3 of 11, which is what? Sorry, I'm having to do math here. Okay, indicate your vote by saying yea to call the question, by saying yay or nay when I call your name. Anderson, no. Leaks?
No.
Leaks, you were? Mr. Leaks, were you
no.
yes or no?
No.
Okay, thank you. Mood?
No.
Tarasia?
No.
Huggins?
No.
Dickerson?
No.
Burgess?
Yes.
Howard? Mr. Howard? Okay, Dr. Morris?
Abstain.
Mr. Smith? No. Ms. Gleason?
Abstain.
Okay, so the motion to call the question fails. So Franny, correct me if I'm wrong.
Okay.
We're back to the motion to table, which Mr. Huggins has, and you were trying to withdraw
Correct.
that.
And a motion, he can withdraw the motion to table
Okay.
to allow for further debate, but a motion to table is not debatable. So Mr. Huggins would want to withdraw his motion to table, if you want discussion to continue.
Leave it on the table.
Ms. Ruggin?
I want
Okay.
to allow discussion.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So do you would need to move to withdraw your motion?
I think he just withdraws it with the consent of the person who made the second.
And who made the second?
Mr. Chairman.
Hold on one second. Who made the second? Mr. Leaks, do you agree to withdraw the motion to table?
I think we should leave the motion on the table. I think we should leave it on the table and vote on it.
Okay, Franny, what do I do if,
All right, just,
Okay.
here's what I would.
I have a motion to
Too much
adjourn.
confusion.
This is confusing. And so if, Mr. Leaks, I would ask that you agree to Mr. Huggins withdrawing his motion to table, and then a motion to table be made by someone else in a second, and then you go immediately to vote on that motion. A motion to table should not be debated.
Mr. Chair.
I'm sorry, Mr. Howard's been trying to say something.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Ms. Dickerson.
I follow Mr. Representative Howard.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Howard.
The motion to adjourn.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you, Mr. Howard.
A motion to adjourn the meeting.
You're motioning to adjourn the meeting?
Yes, sir. And that's a higher motion. We have to vote on that motion.
Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I second.
Okay, Ms. Burgess is second. I have a motion to adjourn and a second. Before we move on, Franny, did we clear up the table motion?
The motion to adjourn is a higher motion. Nothing comes before.
Yeah,
that.
the motion to adjourn is a privileged motion. So
Is there
it takes
discussion on that?
precedent.
So that clears
You have
the
to vote on
table.
that.
Okay, got it. Okay, so I have a motion to adjourn and a second. From Mr. Howard and a second from, who made the second? From Ms. Burgess, I believe. Okay, I have a motion and a second. This is a simple majority to end the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so,
So is there no discussion on that?
No discussion. It's a higher motion.
Okay, there's
You
a
don't-
motion and a second.
Not debatable.
Indicate your vote by saying yea or nay when I call your name. This is a motion to adjourn. Anderson, no. Lee?
Yes.
Mood?
No.
Horacio?
Yes.
Huggins?
Yes.
Dickerson? Burgess?
Yes.
Howard?
Yes.
Morris?
Yes.
Smith?
No.
Gleaton?
Yes.
Okay, the motion to adjourn carries. So the meeting is ended.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Thank you.
Hey.
Thank you, Lord.
I'd say you have to have a sense of humor, but you don't have Okay, what did we have left on there? Done.
The RATP Dev change order 2, and then, just executive session items.
Okay, well, you and Mr. Leaks have to sort it out.
Get with them and we'll figure it out.
Okay?
And I guess the intergovernmental agreement.
Hello?